The sun had just begun its descent over the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, as Emma Harper biked home from the library in the small town of Crescent Falls. 12 years old, curious, and deeply attuned to the world around her, Emma had a knack for noticing the little things, the rustle of leaves in the breeze, the distant hum of cicadas, or the soft, almost imperceptible purr of her neighbor's cat, Whiskers, as it trailed her on her evening rides. What Emma didn't notice was the faint ripple in the sky above her, a shimmer that seemed out of place amidst the tranquil colors of dusk. Far above, hidden by the atmosphere, the vast Zeltrax Empire station hovered in orbit. A sprawling metallic citadel, it was equipped with advanced sensors that scanned the cosmos for anomalies or anything of potential interest. The Empire's reputation as conquerors was well-deserved, their dominance maintained through unrelenting technological superiority and a dismissive attitude toward other species. Inside the station's grand observation deck, Commander Trinix stood with his arms crossed, his sleek, blue-tinted armor reflecting the lights of dozens of holographic screens. The signal that had piqued their interest earlier in the day now glowed steadily on one of the displays. "It's just a human child," sneered Dravik, a junior officer with a permanent smirk. "Why are we wasting time on this primitive world?" Commander Trinix didn't respond immediately. Instead, he watched the live feed from one of their surveillance drones. The girl pedaled her bicycle down a dirt road, her backpack slightly askew, her red hair catching the fading sunlight like a flame. The drone's sensors had picked up an unusual energy signature emanating from her earlier, something faint yet unlike anything recorded on Earth before. "We're investigating because it's different," Trinix said finally, his tone sharp. "Difference has a habit of being useful. Or dangerous." Dravik scoffed but said no more. Trinix ordered a retrieval squad to prepare. It wasn't the first time they had abducted a being for observation, and Earth's primitive inhabitants were blissfully unaware of their activities. They would extract the girl, study her, and discard her once her secrets or lack thereof were uncovered. Emma's peaceful ride came to an abrupt halt when she noticed a strange hum filling the air. Whiskers, who had been trailing her, stopped dead in his tracks, his fur bristling as he hissed toward the sky. Emma frowned, looking up just as the air around her seemed to shimmer and distort. A brilliant beam of light engulfed her before she could even scream, and she felt a strange, weightless sensation as the world dissolved around her. When the light faded, Emma found herself standing on a cold, metallic floor, surrounded by towering, sleek figures. They were humanoid but distinctly alien, their smooth, elongated skulls glowing faintly under the sterile lights. Their eyes were sharp and calculating, and their posture radiated authority. Behind them, the walls pulsed with an otherworldly energy, adorned with holographic panels displaying symbols and images she couldn't decipher. One of the figures, clad in armor more ornate than the others, stepped forward. Commander Trinix. He studied her with an air of detached curiosity. "You're smaller than I expected," he said, his voice resonating with an almost musical quality, though the tone was biting. Emma stared at him, wide-eyed and speechless. The other aliens chuckled, their voices echoing in mockery. She felt a flush of embarrassment and fear creeping up her spine but clenched her fists to steady herself. "What do you want with me?" she finally managed, her voice trembling. Trinix tilted his head, intrigued by her defiance. "We detected an anomaly, little human. Something unusual about you. You're here to help us uncover it." Before Emma could reply, a low, rumbling growl echoed through the room. She turned to see a massive, black-furred creature in a glass enclosure at the far end of the chamber. Its piercing golden eyes locked onto her, and its teeth gleamed like daggers. The sight made her heart pound, but something about the creature drew her attention, a faint flicker of intelligence in its gaze. "That's Sarnak," Trinix said, following her gaze. "The deadliest predator from the jungles of Verox. It doesn't take kindly to strangers." He smirked, his tone turning mocking. "But don't worry, little human. You'll be meeting it soon enough." The room erupted in laughter as Emma's mind raced. Fear and confusion churned within her, but beneath it all, a spark of resolve flared. Whatever these beings had planned, she wouldn't let them break her spirit. Little did she know, the connection she was about to form with the fearsome Sarnak would shake the very foundations of the Zeltrax Empire. Emma sat alone in a cold, metallic chamber illuminated by harsh, blue-white lights. The walls were smooth and seamless, humming faintly with the energy of alien technology. She had been left here for what felt like hours, the initial fear ebbing into a simmering frustration. A single thought repeated in her mind, "What do they want from me?" The silence was broken when the door hissed open. Commander Trinix entered, flanked by 2 guards. His calculating gaze swept over Emma as he gestured for her to follow. "It's time," he said curtly. Emma swallowed her fear and stood, her small frame dwarfed by the towering aliens. They led her through winding corridors lined with glowing panels that displayed alien symbols and images. The hum of machinery filled the air, a constant reminder of the advanced technology around her. Finally, they arrived at a large chamber that was part laboratory, part biodome. The room was enormous, filled with exotic plants and alien creatures housed in transparent enclosures. The air smelled faintly of ozone and something sweetly floral. At the center of the room was a massive glass dome, within which lay an artificial jungle teeming with life. Emma's eyes widened as she took in the vibrant, alien flora and fauna. It was like stepping into a scene from a sci-fi movie. Trinix stopped before the dome and turned to face her. "This," he said, gesturing to the jungle, "is your test. We've observed a peculiar energy signature from you. If you possess the abilities we suspect, you'll survive. If not—" He smirked, letting the sentence hang. Before Emma could respond, the floor beneath her shifted, and she was gently lowered into the dome. She landed on soft, mossy ground and quickly realized she wasn't alone. The air around her was alive with movement chirps, growls, and rustling leaves. Alien creatures of all shapes and sizes moved through the jungle, some watching her with curiosity, others with predatory intent. Above her, Trinix and a group of Zeltrax scientists observed from a control room. They were confident the experiment would end with Emma frightened and overwhelmed, proving their superiority once again. But Emma wasn't ordinary. Her first encounter was with a bird-like creature, its shimmering, iridescent feathers shifting colors as it glided down from a branch. It chirped sharply, a sound that seemed both inquisitive and threatening. Emma crouched low, holding out her hand. Her heart raced, but she focused on the feeling that had always come naturally to her when she was near animals, empathy. "Hey," she said softly. "I won't hurt you." The bird paused, its head tilting as if understanding her words. It let out a softer chirp, then hopped closer, its sharp claws barely grazing her fingers as it perched on her hand. Emma smiled, relief washing over her. She had no idea the Zeltrax scientists above were watching in stunned silence. The real test came moments later. From the shadows of the jungle emerged Sarnak. The feline predator was twice the size of a lion, its sleek black fur gleaming like polished obsidian. Its golden eyes locked onto Emma, and a low, rumbling growl filled the air. The other creatures scattered, sensing the apex predator's presence. Emma froze, her instinct screaming at her to run, but something kept her rooted in place. She held Sarnak's gaze, her breathing steadying as she reached out with that same empathy. "You're scared too, aren't you?" she thought, the connection between them forming in her mind like a bridge. Sarnak took a step closer, its growl softening into a curious rumble. Emma knelt, lowering herself to seem less threatening. She extended her hand, her voice trembling but steady. "It's okay," she whispered. "I'm not going to hurt you." The scientists gasped as Sarnak did the unthinkable. Instead of pouncing, the massive feline sniffed Emma's hand, then pressed its head against her palm in a gesture of submission. Emma smiled, gently stroking the beast's fur. Sarnak let out a deep purr, its body relaxing as it curled around her protectively. In the control room, Trinix's jaw clenched. The other scientists exchanged nervous glances, their earlier mockery replaced with stunned silence. "What is she?" one of them whispered. Trinix didn't answer. His gaze remained fixed on the girl, who now sat calmly beside the most fearsome predator they had ever captured. This wasn't just luck or coincidence. There was something extraordinary about her, something they had underestimated. "Prepare the secondary tests," he ordered sharply, his tone betraying a hint of unease. "We need to understand this anomaly." But deep down, he knew that Emma was more than an anomaly. She was a challenge to everything the Zeltrax believed about superiority and dominance. And for the first time, the mighty Empire felt a flicker of doubt. As the night fell within the artificial jungle, Emma rested against Sarnax's warm flank. For the first time since her abduction, she felt a sense of safety. Little did she know, the events of this day would set into motion a series of revelations that would change her life and the Zeltrax Empire forever. The artificial night in the dome passed uneventfully. Emma woke to the soft hum of the biodome systems and the gentle rumbling of Sarnak, still curled protectively around her. For a brief moment, she felt safe, as if the jungle were her home. But the cold, metallic voice of Commander Trinix over an unseen speaker shattered the illusion. "Subject 716, he announced, his tone clinical. "Your next test begins now." Emma tensed, her hand resting instinctively on Sarnak's sleek fur. The jungle around her began to shift. The trees and plants moved as mechanical platforms beneath the ground rearranged the environment. Sections of the jungle folded away, replaced by barren terrain dotted with jagged rocks and glowing pools of unknown liquids. The temperature rose, and the air became dense with a metallic tang. Sarnak growled low in its throat, sensing the danger before Emma did. From the shadows, new creatures emerged. These were nothing like the ones she had encountered before. They were mechanical hybrids, part organic, part machine, their bodies sleek and bristling with weaponry. Their glowing red eyes locked onto Emma, and a chilling realization struck her: these creatures were designed to kill. "Observe, scientists," Trinix's voice continued from the control room above. "This will determine the extent of her influence. Let's see if her connection extends to artificial life." Emma's heart pounded. She looked to Sarnak, who stood between her and the advancing hybrids, its fur bristling. But she knew the feline alone couldn't protect her from what was coming. Her mind raced, grasping for a solution. Could she connect with these mechanical beasts as she had with the organic ones? She took a deep breath, centering herself as the first hybrid launched. Sarnak met it mid-air, claws tearing into metal plating, but more hybrids were closing in. Emma stepped forward, her fear giving way to a strange sense of determination. She focused on the nearest hybrid, its sleek, insect-like body emitting a high-pitched whine. Reaching out with her mind, she tried to connect. At first, there was nothing but static, a cold emptiness that made her shiver. But then, she felt a faint pulse, like a heartbeat hidden within the machine. It wasn't alive, not in the way Sarnak was, but there was something there, something responsive. Emma latched onto it, willing it to listen. "Stop," she whispered, her voice trembling but firm. "You don't have to do this." The hybrid hesitated, its glowing eyes flickering. The scientists above gasped as their instruments registered the anomaly. Trinix leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "Impossible," he muttered. "She's reprogramming them." "Without technology?" One by one, the hybrids froze, their predatory stances softening. Emma's connection grew stronger as she extended her influence to the entire group. She could feel their mechanical minds responding to her commands, bending to her will like vines to sunlight. The hybrids turned away from her, retreating into the shadows. Sarnak approached Emma, its golden eyes filled with something akin to pride. She knelt and pressed her forehead to the feline's, drawing strength from its warmth. Above her, the Zeltrax scientists were in chaos. "This isn't just empathy," one of them said, their voice filled with awe. She's rewriting their code. How is that possible? It shouldn't be, Trennick snapped. She's a human child from a primitive world. There's no explanation for this. The experiment ended, but the questions it raised were far from over. Emma was brought back to a new chamber, this one far more comfortable than the cold, sterile cell she had started in. It was clear the Zeltrax Empire now saw her as something more than an anomaly. They saw her as a resource. But Emma felt their unease, their fear. They couldn't control her, and that made her dangerous. As she rested, she noticed Sarnak lying by the chamber's entrance, its body a barrier between her and the outside world. Despite everything, the connection they shared gave her a small sense of comfort. But her mind was restless. Why could she connect with these creatures and machines? What was this strange energy the Zeltrax spoke of? Later that day, Emperor Zalvis himself addressed her through a holographic projection. His tall, imposing figure loomed in the center of the room, his expression inscrutable. "You have demonstrated abilities that defy explanation," he said. "Abilities that could benefit the Zeltrax Empire and Earth." Emma frowned, her defiance rising. "What do you mean?" "We need you to cooperate," Zalvis replied. "Help us harness this power, and in return, we will share our technological advancements with your world. Earth could be transformed, its environment repaired, its people elevated beyond their primitive state. But if you refuse—" He paused, his eyes narrowing. "We cannot guarantee your safety. Or the safety of your planet." Emma's fists clenched. She wasn't naive, she could hear the threat beneath his words. But she also recognized the opportunity. If she played her cards right, she could help Earth and uncover the truth about her abilities. The Zeltrax Empire had made one critical mistake. They assumed she was just a child who could be controlled. But Emma was learning, adapting, and growing stronger. "I'll think about it," she said, her voice steady despite the fear bubbling beneath her calm exterior. The Emperor's hologram vanished, leaving her alone with her thoughts. She looked at Sarnak, whose golden eyes seemed to mirror her determination. She wasn't sure what the future held, but one thing was clear: she was no longer just a frightened girl from Earth. She was a force the Zeltrax Empire had never encountered before, and she was just getting started. Emma stood on the observation deck of the Zeltrax station, gazing out at the vast expanse of stars. Earth was a shimmering blue marble far below, fragile and beautiful. Beside her, Sarnak prowled silently, its golden eyes scanning the room, ever watchful. The once mocking stares of the Zeltrax officers had turned to wary respect. Even Commander Trennick, who had viewed her as nothing more than an experiment, now maintained a cautious distance. The events of the last few days had changed everything. Emma's decision to cooperate with the Zeltrax Empire came with conditions. She would share her abilities to help them understand the connection she held with organic and mechanical beings, but in return, they would provide Earth with the technology to heal its environment and stabilize its ecosystems. Emperor Zalvis had agreed, though the tension in his voice made it clear he saw her as a threat he couldn't yet neutralize. The first step in their alliance was a demonstration of her powers. The Zeltrax biotechnicians, led by the brilliant but skeptical Dr. Erlin, presented Emma with a failing biosphere simulation, a massive dome filled with dying plants and malfunctioning machines. It had been designed to mimic Earth's conditions, and its decay mirrored the environmental crises plaguing her home. "You claim you can fix this," Dr. Erlin said, her tone laced with doubt. "Prove it." Emma stepped into the dome, her heart heavy as she surveyed the withering plants and sputtering machinery. Sarnak patted silently at her side, its presence a comfort. Closing her eyes, she reached out with her mind, the now familiar energy pulsing within her. She focused on the plants first, feeling their thirst and desperation. Like a gentle rain, she poured her empathy into them, coaxing life back into their roots. The Zeltrax scientists watched in awe as the plants began to recover, their leaves unfurling and their colors deepening. The air in the dome grew richer, filled with the scent of blooming flowers. Next, Emma turned her attention to the machines. Their hums were disjointed, chaotic, like an orchestra playing out of sync. She extended her mind to them, finding their rhythms and harmonizing them. The broken machinery flickered to life, their movements becoming fluid and purposeful. Within hours, the dome was transformed into a thriving ecosystem. The Zeltrax scientists, once dismissive, now stared at Emma with something approaching reverence. "How is this possible?" Dr. Erilyn whispered, her voice trembling. "You're rewriting the fundamental relationships between life and technology." Emma met her gaze, her own confidence growing. "Maybe it's not about rewriting," she said. "Maybe it's about listening. Understanding." Word of Emma's abilities spread quickly through the station, and then beyond. The Zeltrax Empire's citizens, long accustomed to seeing themselves as the galaxy's pinnacle, began to question their assumptions. If a human child could bridge the gap between biology and technology, what else had they overlooked? The Empire's rigid hierarchy and condescension toward other species began to crack. But not everyone welcomed this change. Emperor Zalvus saw Emma's growing influence as a threat to his control. In secret, he ordered a contingency plan, a fail-safe device hidden deep within the station, capable of neutralizing her powers and severing her connection to the beings around her. Trinix, loyal to the Emperor but increasingly conflicted, was tasked with activating the device. The pivotal moment came during a grand assembly in the station's central hall. Emma stood before a crowd of Zeltrax citizens, diplomats from other species, and Earth representatives who had been brought aboard to witness the Alliance negotiations. Sarnak sat beside her, its imposing presence a silent declaration of her strength. Emma spoke with a clarity and passion that belied her years. "The connection I have isn't unique to me," she said. "It's something we all have the potential to achieve if we stop seeing differences as barriers and start seeing them as opportunities." The crowd murmured, some nodding in agreement. Even Trinix, standing at the edge of the assembly, felt a flicker of admiration for the girl who had defied every expectation. But then, the atmosphere shifted. A deep, ominous hum resonated through the hall as the failsafe device activated. Emma staggered, clutching her head as the energy that connected her to the world around her was abruptly severed. Sarnak roared in distress, its golden eyes flashing with fury as it crouched protectively over Emma. From the shadows, Trinix stepped forward, his hand trembling as he held the remote that controlled the failsafe. The Emperor's voice echoed through the hall, cold and unyielding. "This is why we cannot allow her to wield unchecked power. She is a danger to us all." The crowd gasped, but before chaos could erupt, Emma straightened. Despite the pain, she met Trinix's gaze. "You don't have to do this," she said, her voice steady. "You can choose something better." For a long moment, Trinix hesitated. He looked at Emma, at the hope and determination in her eyes, and then at the fears that ruled his Emperor. With a decisive motion, he deactivated the device. The hum ceased, and Emma's connection returned, flooding her senses with relief. Sarnak growled low, its golden eyes fixed on the Emperor's hologram. The crowd erupted in applause, and the tide turned irrevocably in Emma's favor. The alliance between Earth and the Zeltrax Empire was formalized that day. Emma became a symbol of unity, her story spreading across the galaxy. The Zeltrax began to shift their focus from conquest to cooperation, inspired by the girl who had shown them the power of connection. Back on Earth, Emma's return was met with celebration. Her work with the Zeltrax brought advanced technology that healed ecosystems, reversed environmental damage, and elevated humanity's understanding of the universe. As she stood on her front porch, looking up at the stars, Sarnak at her side, Emma knew her journey was just beginning. The galaxy was vast, and there were countless others who needed to see what she had shown the Zeltrax, that true strength comes not from domination, but from harmony. And Emma Harper, the girl who had once been mocked and underestimated, was ready to lead the way.